Hey, everybody, this is Jason Grewa, and welcome back to The Fresh Wire. I'm your host, as I have been for the past few episodes. It is episode 4, lucky number 4 for some of you people. It is 11:02 p.m., August 29th, 2023, Eastern Time. A lot has happened in the past week, and I'm fully prepared to go all out and check everything out. As I continue to figure things out with this podcast, let me know if you have any feedback or maybe questions that I could check out for future episodes. But in the meantime, let's get into everything that I consider important. Now, we're going to start off with something that's, for some people, might be pretty important. Not entirely as much for me as it is for others, but a few well-known people in the entertainment industry, Bob Barker and Arlene Sorkin, passed away in the past few days. Bob Barker, the famous host for The Price is Right and for previous shows, including Truth and Consequences. He's been very well known in entertainment in general. Everything that he's been saying, his famous phrases. He was also an animal activist. He was 99 and died a few months short of his 100th birthday. Now, he stopped hosting it in 2007, so I wasn't really into game shows just yet, so I didn't really get to see him when he did his new episodes. But from what everyone's reaction to his passing was, it's pretty obvious he was a very caring, passionate person across the board. He was given an Emmy Award for a Lifetime Achievement. One thing that I knew him was in the movie Happy Gilmore, one of my favorite films, starring Adam Sandler. He had a pretty funny cameo in one of the scenes, and it stuck out to me because I watched the film years ago, and it's still something I look back on as like something pretty funny. But he was clearly remembered as The Price is Right host, and also the host for, even earlier than that, Truth and Consequences, which he took over in 1956. So he was on TV for 51 years. Pretty impressive. And yeah, rest in peace to Bob Barker. Arlene Sorkin was the voice at one point for Harley Quinn in the animated DC universe. She started in 1992, voicing Harley Quinn in Batman the Animated Series, reprising her role in later shows such as Superman, the animated series, Batman Beyond, Gotham Girls, Justice League, and Static Shock. And she also gave her voice as Harley Quinn for some video games, including Batman Arkham Asylum and DC Universe Online, which DC Universe Online I actually did play as a kid when it was on the PlayStation 3. So I got pretty deep into the game, so that I respect. And a lot of people had very deep tributes and want to remember her fondly for everything that she's done. She was also on a lot of TV shows earlier than Batman, including Open House, Dream On, Perry Mason. She had an appearance on Saturday Night Live. Very, very deep portfolio of great appearances and performances, and she will be missed too, of course. So I wanted to get those over with. I think they were two of the most important things that happened in the entertainment industry in the past week. So to continue on with upsetting news, I'm a huge fan of the recently released Dune film. Okay, I really had no way to get through that, transition that properly, but I really wanted to mention this early on as well. Dune Part 2, which was supposed to release, I think, in November, and even had some trailers release, has been pushed back to next year, specifically March 15th, 2024. It's been pushed back because in large part of the ongoing strike by the Screen Actors Guild and the Writers Guild, which is obviously continuing. It's unfortunate. I have full respect for the writers and actors that are on strike. They deserve whatever they want. Pretty much what their demands have been are completely reasonable. And as a result, even for films that have been virtually completed, there isn't really, actors can't be on red carpets, for example. So a lot of PR and press for the days before the film's release can't happen. And because of the unknown on when the strikes will end, if they do anytime soon. With this film originally set to release in November, that's too soon for comfort. Movie companies had a rough time when it was early COVID pandemic and they had films releasing in March, April, May 2020, and they had no choice but to completely damage their PR and press releases and whatnot because the film was not going to release in theaters when no one could go to the theaters, assuming they were like closed off or everything like that. So it's kind of similar, but obviously similar results, I guess, but very different conditions causing it. Dune Part 1, technically, released back in 2021. Fantastic film. I loved just about every part of it. I was very excited for Part 2. I respect I don't respect the company for this decision because it's because of PR that they're not going to release it, is my assumption, and that's very unfortunate. The reality is that the strike agreement prevents actors from promoting their work made under the old deal. So stars can't do any press for any of the big movies, even ones that have been finished or will not have reshoots or don't need reshoots. Maybe they did, but they can make it work. Somehow, I mean, they could make it work and make money, but will critics and audiences like it is unknown. I know The Equalizer 3 is set to release in a few days. I've been seeing commercials for that, and it was Denzel Washington being interviewed, and at the very end of the commercial, because it's him being interviewed, it said interviews filmed prior to, I think it was July 14th. It was the middle of July, which I think I think that's just to show they were interviewed before the strike was kicked in for the actors. Because I don't think there's any major PR for that because the actors are still on strike. So I anticipate that the film will not do as good as it would have been if actors could do PR. And it could also be a smoking gun of, will corporations do what they're doing with Dune Part 2 across the board if The Equalizer 3 ends up not being successful or less successful than anticipated because of the lack of press. No idea. A tiny bit of good news is that the director of Dune shared that Dune 3 is a possibility. Denis Villeneuve. I might have said that really badly, but he said, I will say there are words on paper. That's pretty exciting. I thought this was going to be just a 2-part thing. If Dune Part 2 is as good as Dune Part 1, I would be completely down for Part 3 if there is sort of like a reason to it. Apparently, this article says Dune Part 3 would be based on Dune Messiah, which is the direct sequel to Dune, the original novel from 1965. So yeah, Dune Part 1 and 2 is one massive story. Dune Part 3 would be, I guess, a technically true sequel compared to a 2-parter. That'd be pretty exciting, and I'd be down. But of course, we're all lucky to have Dune Part 2 because Dune Part 1, I think, had to be successful, and because it was successful so early on and it got screwed over because of its strange release scheduling, I think HBO Max in 2021, every film that was releasing in theaters, I think, was also releasing on HBO Max. Now Max, irrelevant. I guess maybe the expectations were lower, but it's good. If I succeed in making a trilogy, that would be the dream, he said in a recent interview with Empire. I hope he gets to, assuming they're all equally as good as the first one. So moving on now to away from movies and TV shows. Overall, not great news for the past week, but it is what it is. Now into video games, and there was a lot of video game stuff that have happened. First off, Call of Duty getting some very strange characters joining their roster, specifically Lara Croft and Nicki Minaj. I just wanted to mention this. I'm not really too fond of Call of Duty. I played the mobile one here and there. When the PS5 released, I got the Call of Duty that released, I think it was Cold War? I think it was Cold War. I'm going to confirm right now. Okay, yeah, Black Ops Cold War. That's what it was. It was such a blip in my mind. I completely forgot what it was. But yeah, it was Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, and it was fine, but that was the main one that I played in a very long time. I played Warzone. I played Modern Warfare 2 back on the 360, And that's my history with Call of Duty. But I did want to mention this because it's just so strange. Lara Croft from the famous Tomb Raider franchise. I've played a few Tomb Raider games. They're pretty good, really good. And it's just very strange such a crossover can happen. And it'll be very curious to see how that plays out, if more of those sort of characters will continue to appear in games like Call of Duty. It's kind of like the Fortnite effect, in a way. The Fortnite effect. I'm totally naming that original, where these insane ensemble of third-party characters from across all sorts of mediums join Fortnite. Could that happen with Call of Duty? Absolutely no idea. Modern Warfare 3 is releasing in, I think, a few months. So maybe it'll go double time with the release schedule of Modern Warfare 3. No idea. Baldur's Gate 3 is another important game to talk about that recently released to critical acclaim, unless you're an Xbox fan, in which case you probably are critical of the company, as it has yet to release for Xbox Series X and S. However, that will soon change later this year, as the studio's creative director, studio being Larian Studios, confirmed that it will release later this year instead of whatever the plan was. I think it was next year, because of the whole problem with split-screen cooperative play. I don't know how I said it, co-op play. I don't know why I'm messing up that word, but split-screen co-op play will not appear on the Xbox Series S version. Now, the difference, for if you may not know, Microsoft released two different Xboxes for this generation of gaming consoles, the Series X and the Series S. The Series X is noticeably more powerful than the Series S, but the S is cheaper and has no disk drive. However, because it's of Microsoft's, I guess, supposed requirement that there has to be feature parity to get something as intense as split-screen co-op play on the weaker machine has been a challenge, and this could be a first time where a big feature such as split-screen co-op play is not going to be present on the weaker machine for the same copy of the game. Usually it's just been graphical changes, as it's a weaker machine, so a lower resolution, maybe a lower frame rate, so it's not as smooth, but now it's just going to be missing a feature. Now, whether or not that will still arrive to the Series S is not certain. It says there will be cross-save progression between Steam and Xbox Series, so if you have the game on Steam, you'll be able to move your save, I guess, over to the Xbox version when it releases later this year. They had to reinforce a few weeks ago that technical limitations, not platform exclusivity deals, were holding up the Xbox release, because it is set to release on PlayStation 5 September 6th, so about a week from now. And it released on PC earlier this month, August 3rd. A little update is that Microsoft said on social media, because it does look a little off-putting that a big feature like split-screen co-op play, it's kind of reminiscent of what happened with Microsoft's release of Halo Infinite. A big feature for that, I think, was split-screen offline co-op play or whatever didn't make it, and they had no. They said they were going to, I think, and they ended up just canceling that idea. Maybe because Halo Infinite was not as popular as they anticipated, or maybe getting that onto Xbox Series S or all the Xboxes was more of a challenge than they anticipated. Microsoft said on social media that they will continue to work with Larian Studios to explore the addition of split screen on Series S post-launch. So while the original plan was for Baldur's Gate 3 to release on Xbox Series X and S next year, it could still happen that the split screen could still end up making it next year. It's just the feature parity is no longer necessary for a release this year. Overall, good news, assuming the split screen co-op makes it in for Series S. Otherwise, it is a little upsetting, but it's good that Series X players will get the full experience that PlayStation 5 and PC users will be able to get without waiting much longer. Now, that was a little of Microsoft. Now into Sony with PlayStation. This was a big surprise. People heard about this when it was announced in a capacity a few months ago, but they are officially announcing it. The PlayStation Portal. It's what they're calling PlayStation's first remote play dedicated device. Its main thing, it can stream your PlayStation 5 games on a dedicated device, if that wasn't obvious. It has an 8-inch 1080p 60 frames per second display. It's an LCD panel, so it's not like the crazy high-end displays that phones have nowadays where there are higher refresh rates, higher resolution, OLED instead of LCD like this will use. On the sides are split up pieces of a DualSense controller. It's a little hard to it's not that difficult to explain. It's literally the PS5's DualSense, the normal PS5 controller cut in half and put on the sides of an 8-inch tablet. I think that's the best way to explain it. It looks like it. It doesn't look, in my eyes, it doesn't even look that creative. It has like the blue LED strip, rather than how a DualSense controller normally would, because it would have to be on the back of the display, which would be pretty weird. But is it worth it? As of now, no. It has a 3.5 millimeter audio jack, but apparently it doesn't have Bluetooth, which is, I don't think they officially confirmed that. But rather than saying it has Bluetooth, it has what's called, I think it's PlayStation Link. I'm just going to confirm that. But it will play your PS5 games remotely over Wi-Fi. Now, my assumption is if you're away from your house and you hook it up to your phone's hotspot, it should still work there. I think that's how remote play can work with your phone. Keeping in mind, remote play works with your phone. I think it does with iPhones like iOS, and it certainly does with Android. I've done it before. It's been a thing since the PS4, and if you had a PSP, PlayStation Portable, or PlayStation Vita, which were Sony's previous dedicated handheld gaming machines, they had that feature built right in. The PSP could do PS3 streaming, but it was very limited. The PSP was noticeably weaker hardware. The Vita could stream PS4 games. And this can only do PS5 games. You can't stream games that are from the cloud, however. That is something to keep in mind. It says here, games that are streamed through PlayStation Plus Premium's cloud streaming are not supported. PlayStation Plus is the paid online subscription that you get with a PlayStation 5 or 4 that allows you to have online multiplayer. Unless it's some free-to-play games where they don't require it, which is cool. And you also get free monthly games for as long as you keep the subscription. Recently, they introduced PlayStation Plus Premium, which allows for cloud streaming of games on your PS5. You don't have to download some games anymore. I think this includes PS5 games, and of course includes older games that are not officially supported on the PS5 at all, including PlayStation 3 games. Infamously, for the PS4, there was never an official way to download and install and locally play PS3 games, unlike the similar capacity that happened with the Xbox One by Microsoft. It didn't support backwards compatibility at all until people wanted it, and Microsoft, I guess, figured it out, and a lot of hundreds, I think, of Xbox 360 and original Xbox games became supported, and that moved over to the Series X and Series S. The PS5 can only play PS4 games. Little annoying, but with the streaming, some PS3 games and even older ones now work in some capacity. I think some even older games like PS1 and PS2, if they're emulated, they work, but not if you have like the original disc. So I'm sorry. If you still have a copy of Gran Turismo 2 for the original PlayStation, well, I hope you have a PS3 or older. It'll support those, not the PS5. But even if you could stream all of that, it will not work with the PlayStation Portal. So that's a little annoying, but one person I saw talking about this said it's probably because there would be less of a point to having a PS5. Because then you could just have PlayStation Plus Premium and the PlayStation Portal, and if you could cloud stream these games, there'd be no need for a PS5. So they removed that functionality if they were ever going to add it, so that now you need a PS5. This is a PS5 accessory through and through, and it costs $200 for something you can do on your phone or tablet with possibly a nicer screen. This is an LCD panel. Now, from the video and images that I saw of people actually using one, it doesn't look that bad. But again, it's not an OLED, so blacks won't be deep black. It won't be super colorful. It won't pop out. It'll look standard, and because it's 1080p 60 frames per second, you're also not going to get high fidelity, high frame rates, nice resolution. I mean, at 8 inches, maybe 1080p higher than that would not have made much sense, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, this device, at all to begin with. Pre-orders have not yet begun, and it doesn't look like there's Bluetooth. PlayStation Link. So I was correct. PlayStation Link. They did introduce new headphones and new earphones that use PlayStation Link, which allow for low latency, lossless audio. It's kind of like what a USB adapter would for wireless headphones nowadays to begin with. This will be built into the PlayStation Portal, but not Bluetooth. If you want to use regular old earphones, you have to use the aux port. One cool thing about PlayStation Link is that you can use it along with a Bluetooth-supported device. So maybe if you want to talk with people, I mean, it reminds me of Nintendo with their method of they didn't support Bluetooth audio, but also their online subscription to talk with people required using an app. That's a whole other ordeal that I don't think ever got resolved, but it's not the topic for today. I'll just say that. So one cool thing that caught me off guard was that these earphones and headphones, I don't know if it says it in this article. I'm looking at the official PlayStation blog article, but I heard they use planar technology. Yeah, custom designed planar magnetic drivers for an audiophile level listening experience. That's funny. I actually have headphones that use planar magnetic. They're the Odyssey, AUDEZE Penrose headphones. I got them in 2020. They were releasing around the time the PS5 launched, and they're overall very solid. Bit pricey for headphones. I think they were around $250, $200. Bit pricey. They've since had a successor. I haven't bought that. My headphones are still A-okay. Just had to get the mic replaced at one point. I heard that Sony is buying Odyssey, and that's why they were able to create these new headphones and earphones that cost around $150 to $200 with planar magnetic. Odyssey is very ahead of the game with planar magnetic, and they've usually been well received, including me. I definitely did enjoy them. I had a whole ordeal of issues with them that didn't overall make them a deal breaker, but some of them did get eventually resolved, and I respect that. But it looks like now there's going to be official Sony options, but I don't even know if these are going to have Bluetooth. I mean, they'll support Bluetooth. These will support Bluetooth. But if you want to use the PlayStation Link functionality and you don't have the portal because you don't want to spend $200 on something that you might find you would have no necessary use for if you really want to just use your phone and connect a controller, there will be a USB adapter for PlayStation Link that will be sold separately. It will not come with it. That's annoying. Maybe even a little anti-consumer. You would probably buy this specifically for PlayStation Portal. However, if they're good enough, I mean, the headphones being $150, if they're like really good, like as good as the ones I had for $250, it could be a good deal. But if you want to use the technology, you'll have to pay a little bit more. And the earphones being $200, that's actually not that bad for high quality earphones. It's just unknown how far they'll go. If they'll have great noise canceling. I mean, this is Sony. They're the same people that made the absolutely great headphones and earphones that are the XM 1000 XM5, whether it's earphone or headphones. They're outstanding. I have the headphones that end in XM5, and I used to have the earphones that ended in XM3. Their noise canceling is fantastic. If that similar sort of quality can be achieved here, that's pretty good. I don't see that happening. Their new earphones cost $300. Their new headphones cost, I think, more than that. I didn't spend that much, but I think they are officially more than that. So this being cheaper, well, it's unknown. But it's going to be a different audience anyway. So in my previous episode, moving away from video game consoles to more on the PC side, I've previously mentioned that AMD and NVIDIA are back again creating some new technology to make games look nicer and run more efficiently on all sorts of hardware. I mentioned that AMD's Fidelity FX Super Resolution 3 was set to release soon, and it was announced in the past few days. Super Resolution 3, which is going to be overall an improvement for whether you have AMD's GPUs or not. More so, I think, for people with AMD GPUs. They're going to introduce new features that will improve things even further and allow things to run even, I think, if there is no official support for it. If it's a certain type of game, it'll support some other functionality with it, which is pretty cool. It's also going to be more intensely utilized. It's going to be more of an impact on performance, so they're also recommending newer and better hardware. But no matter what, because FSR 3 and FSR in general, Fidelity FX Super Resolution, it's not as good as NVIDIA's DLSS because DLSS uses actual hardware on NVIDIA's GPUs. It's more locked down. And if you don't have an NVIDIA GPU, it doesn't matter. But for people that do have an NVIDIA GPU, when a game has FSR but not DLSS, it kind of feels like it's missing out. And that's the case with what's expected to be one of the biggest games of 2023, Bethesda's Starfield. Absolutely exciting game. It's been announced years ago, along with the sequel to Skyrim, which a lot of people should know what that is, but if not, it's a very, very successful game that's been released on countless platforms for the past decade. That's how long ago this game was announced. It was supposed to release a while back, got multiple delays. It's finally releasing in the coming days, and one big announcement was it's going to have FSR, I think 2, built in. And what they confirmed, or at least what we know, is that it will not have DLSS. So if you have an AMD GPU in the first place, no big deal. This won't really affect you too much. If you have an NVIDIA GPU, you're kind of missing out on something that could really benefit maybe weaker hardware. Let's say you have an older GPU that supports DLSS, like one released a few years ago. Well, this would probably benefit you in ways that it won't now because it won't have DLSS support. AMD claims there's nothing stopping Starfield from adding NVIDIA DLSS. AMD gaming chief Frank Azor has repeatedly said in an interview that if they want to do DLSS, they being Bethesda, makers of Starfield, they have AMD's full support, and that there's nothing blocking Bethesda from adding it to the game. One big controversy is that AMD and Bethesda had a public partnership on Starfield to have, I guess, official FSR support. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but it seems like more often than not, if AMD and the game developer have a partnership and they focus on FSR, DLSS is out of the question. A really big Star Wars game released earlier this year, a Jedi game, it had pretty rough performance on PC, and one way to resolve rough performance is by turning on DLSS. Unfortunately, the game didn't officially have it because of the partnership, allegedly because of the partnership between AMD and the game developer, EA. Or that's the publisher, but there's no official DLSS support, unfortunately. I heard that there is a paid month out there that you can purchase and have your code changed, the game's code changed to allow DLSS support, which is pretty unfortunate. It should just be officially supported. The technology between them, at the end of the day, isn't too far different. If one type of technology can be added, another can. So it's pretty annoying. The gaming chief for AMD says, if they ask us for DLSS support, we always tell them yes. One comment I saw, funny enough, said, yeah, they could always get it, but they'll just get, and yeah, they could always ask for it. We'll just tell them yes, you'll just get less money out of us. Now, Bethesda's part of Microsoft, so I don't think that's really just a big deal. The gaming chief, Azor, wouldn't say if Starfield was contractually AMD exclusive or even temporarily. They just reiterated, if and when Bethesda wants to put DLSS into the game, they have our full support. Again, the comment, suggesting, oh yeah, they have our full support, but again, you're going to make less money. Pretty annoying. Starfield will not have FSR 2 at least at launch, AMD confirmed, even though FSR 3 was recently revealed. It would have been probably a big thing if Starfield came with this brand new FSR technology to really push people to maybe think, oh, we don't need DLSS. Don't worry about it. We have FSR 3. It's fantastic. It's going to have all these brand new features. No, it's not having FSR 3, at least at launch. Maybe it'll add in the future. You never know. Overwatch 2, one of my favorite games that I play way too much, has FSR 2.2 built in, and it looks fine, but you definitely don't want to push that sort of technology, unlike what you can with DLSS. I've seen games run on very low resolutions with this NVIDIA technology, and for the most part, they function pretty well and offer big performance boosts. So it's unfortunate. I think both of those should be in. I know Intel also has their own sort of super sampling or undersampling technology as well. I think it's XESS, something like that. And, that sort of technology I heard is actually also pretty good, even compared to AMD. And sometimes, while it's still incomparable, for the most part, to NVIDIA, it's going to always be difficult to utilize the sort of technology without dedicated hardware to it. So moving on from that, we're still on consoles, but it's something I'm going to step into a little bit that I rushed in a bit in my last episode because it was such new info. Nintendo confirming Charles Martinet is not involved in the upcoming Super Mario game, Super Mario Bros. Wonder. This followed the news that Charles Martinet, is stepping back from voicing Nintendo characters, including Mario. He's voiced Mario, the legendary, famous video game plumber, Super Mario 64, back in 1996. I mentioned all of this in my last episode, if you want to check that out. I say it pretty early on. I cut it in. Normally I'm a one-take Jake, but I definitely had to add it in early on. It was only after I finished the episode I realized, I forgot to talk about this. It's such new info. So they confirmed Charles Martinet will not be involved. And that looking ahead, they're looking at on what he'll be doing as a Mario ambassador. So he'll continue to represent the character, just not in future games. Character voice actors will be credited in the game credits, so please wait for the game to be released. So it looks like there's a chance that they might not even announce who's the new voice until the game releases, I think in October. Now, in the coming days, there will be a Super Mario Bros. Wonder Nintendo Direct. It's going to be about 15 minutes long. I think it's going to be on the 31st. It's going to be later this week for sure. And it's going to be about 15 minutes, as I said. But it's going to mention probably a lot about the game that we might not know of yet. It's been a few months since I think the game was officially announced. And it is set to release in October. So it makes sense to get a deeper understanding of what's going to be the first new original 2D Mario game in years. There was a re-release of New Super Mario Bros. U that added Deluxe for the Nintendo Switch, but it was a launch title for the Nintendo Wii U back in 2012. I don't think there's been a new 2D Mario game since then, which is pretty crazy to say. But from the trailer that released when it was officially announced, it looks fantastic. Am I going to buy it? Probably. But because it's close to Black Friday, I'm probably going to hope for a Black Friday sale. So maybe I won't get it day one. I've got a huge backlog of games. Anyway, so there is that. I wanted to touch on that a little more because I didn't really get to beforehand. Now on to the more technical stuff. We talked about entertainment. We talked about video games. Let's get into some tech. Apple has recently announced that there will be a new event in September 12th that they named Wonderlust. It's highly expected to be taking the wraps off of the upcoming iPhone 15, possibly new Apple Watches, and more. The expectation is, or this article says it's, I guess, likely, that the iPhone 15 could come with, for the first time, a USB Type-C port rather than Apple's proprietary Lightning connector. It's funny I can say proprietary and other complex words, but not cooperative. All right, I said it better that time. It doesn't come as a surprise, though, because Apple confirmed last year they would make the change to comply with the European Union's incoming regulations. I think they're starting to enforce, maybe not this year, but the following year, that any new product that's like a mobile device needs to have a USB-C port because the standard port now. So to minimize e-waste. Makes sense. I think that's completely understandable. Micro USB has been a very old standard. USB Type-C has been widely known to be in all sorts of Android devices and especially computers nowadays, including some iPads from Apple themselves. And the iPod Touch has been discontinued. That had a Lightning connector. It's all on the iPhone now. Once the iPhone loses Lightning and sticks to USB-C, it's probably going to be a rude awakening for a lot of the mobile phone industry because of the fact that because so many people have iPhones, Lightning still has to be a very well-supported connector. Lightning, I think, has also only supported USB 2.0 standards anyway, which is, theoretically fast charging if done unofficially, but very slow data speeds. If you want to transfer maybe photos or videos to your computer, it's going to be pretty slow, especially when iPhones can record in 4K, high frame rates. I mean, could be worse. Could be 8K, like what some newer Android phones are capable of doing. This article, however, says that premium models will come with, quote, at least USB 3.2 or Thunderbolt 3, which I think is 40 gigabits per second maximum, which is very high. For context, USB 3.0, when it released or launched, was 5 gigabits per second, and USB 2.0 is 480 megabits per second, so about half a gigabit. Close enough. But all of the new models should have faster 35-watt charging rates, thanks to the new connector, allegedly. Supply chain analyst Ross Young reported that all models of the iPhone 15 should come with the Dynamic Island, which is the bar that hosts all of the camera tech that's in the iPhone 14 Pro. It looks like even the base 15 should have it now. Good. The Samsung Galaxy S10 phones had the sort of bar that had the camera in them, and that released in like 2019. Finally getting well with the times. A rebranding may also be possible. Apple could change the name of maybe the Pro Max to the Ultra, and that it could exclusively get a periscope lens with up to 6 times optical zoom. That's pretty cool. Now, I'm talking a lot about this. I don't have an iPhone or iPad. I just have the good old-fashioned iPod Touch for nostalgic purposes. But I am always interested in this because what Apple does sometimes shakes up the entire industry, and then other companies that make smartphones like Samsung, Motorola, they go around, Google especially, they go around and change up their own devices as well to accommodate and to check out what features may be also interesting enough that they didn't think of that Apple did, or vice versa. It's always interesting when Apple introduces features that Android phones have had for years. I don't even need to list all of them, but there is a lot. But because Apple sometimes tries to make those features that much better, sometimes it's worth it to wait, other times not at all. An incremental update to the Apple Watch lineup is also expected. The Watch Series 9 is rumored to have an improved processor, the S9 processor, based on the A15 processor that's in the iPhone 13. I think they also that's the one that kept in the iPhone 14 as well. Not the Pro, but the base 14. Now, AirPods also has a Lightning connector, so what's expected is AirPods with a USB-C equipped charging case. Now, whether or not any updates will be done to the AirPods themselves is unknown. The charging case could just be the only thing they'll improve. It's someone said, I think an analyst said, Apple could ship its 4th Gen AirPods in the second half of next year or the first half of 2025, when it could also be that Apple launches a pair of cheaper AirPods and a second generation of its over-the-ear AirPods Max, something that I don't know why as many people get it as they do. It is very expensive and very high quality, but still very expensive. And of course, the obvious, more info on iOS 17, macOS Sonoma, the new operating system updates that will come to a lot of different iPhones. I think this is the first iOS that will not be supported on the iPhone 8 and 10. So one of the first that had the infamous but the infamous notch. Yeah, the notch that started it all years ago will not get iOS 17 when it's set to launch later this year. There could also be um, anything else that Apple may focus on usually, but they also usually hold an event in October for their new Macs and iPads, which could include a new MacBook Air, a Pro, which could be powered by the new M3 chip, and possibly a new iPad mini. And of course, all eyes are also on the Apple Vision Pro, which Apple showed off a few months ago in the hopes of getting developers on board before its early next year release. Well, it's now August. This will be mid-September when this happens. So maybe they could talk about it more. Just a reminder, it's $3,499. That's a lot of money for something as what Apple Vision Pro is, an extremely advanced VR headset. And now, finally, something on VR. I know I originally said I'm going to focus on VR every now and then, but a lot of VR news hasn't really happened because of the Meta Connect event happening next month. Probably a lot of news is going to be staying in there. Not a whole lot's going to be taken out. But one thing got out a little early. Beta testers for some Meta Quest users are finally getting the legs. They're being rolled out to beta testers, but in a very limited capacity. There's something called the main home, I guess, for the Meta Quest, whether it's the 2 or the Pro or the upcoming 3, is the Quest Home. And now it looks like it's going to be the earliest iteration of the legs, but you'll be able to now see them in Quest Home. I guess when you're standing there, you could walk up to this mirror. I have a Quest 2 myself, and I haven't tried this out yet. But from what I'm seeing right here, let me see this for a second. It looks like it works, but it's going to be in a very limited capacity. And it'll be a big test when it starts showing up in Horizon Worlds, for example. So it's once that pops up and you're going to have a lot of people with their crazy-looking legs, or just normal-looking ones. But finally, in Meta's VR landscape, that's going to be probably a big deal. And I anticipate that people will appreciate it, but it's also going to be hopefully something that's worked on consistently because, well, there's a lot of tech in our hands and on our eyes, but not really our legs. That could change with the Quest 3, depending on how much better the cameras are, but the Quest 2 and maybe even the Quest Pro, to make the legs work, could be interesting, to say the least. But as a Quest 2 owner, I hope that's going to be something that I will appreciate rather than not like. Now I'm going to do a little speed round in a way of some other smaller topics that I don't know if I would always cover, but I figured I'd just get them in because I can. Some topics that stuck out to me over the past few days that I do want to mention a little bit. Some sports organizations, the NFL, NBA, and UFC, wants to rewrite the laws, saying that the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office works too slowly to take down illegal live streams, and they want to rewrite it for the sake of fast DMCA takedowns. When the DMCA was signed into the government in 1998, it specified that takedown notices are processed expeditiously. In a letter sent to the USPTO, dated the 23rd, the NFL, NBA, and UFC urged the government to change the expeditiously verbiage to instantaneously or near instantaneously. Because because it takes for these sort of sports games to be only a few hours, if it's expeditiously but not immediate, well, the game might be over and people will have seen their stream of their beloved sport game for free. Wanted to mention this because, the letter citing that the global sports industry is losing up to $28 billion in additional potential annual revenue. So clearly it's something that's affecting to them. Now, while they would love to change the law in an instant, right now all they have is a letter to the USPTO, so they're going to have to wait on the government to take action for a long while. Now, will they? Will they not? You never know. Samsung makes it possible for Galaxy Buds, a certain type of Galaxy Buds, to connect to some of its TVs. Galaxy Buds 2 Pro and its newest Neo QLED 8K or micro LED TVs. It's possible through something called Bluetooth Aura Auracast. I don't know why I'm saying that wrong. If I am, Bluetooth Auracast, raising the number of potentially connected Bluetooth headphones from 2 to more than 2. Earlier this year, Samsung used LE Audio to fuel a new feature that allows binaural audio on some Galaxy phones. I don't think mine's included, which is crazy. I have a Galaxy S22 Ultra. I think the main focus was on their folding phones, but they keep improving by adding new features to the Galaxy Buds 2 Pro, and that's something I can respect, especially because I own them. So it's always cool to see. Unfortunately, I don't own this TV, whether it's QLED. My TV is not Samsung. I'll just say that. So this won't affect me, but maybe it'll affect some of you, especially if you have an 8K TV or micro LED TV, which I know costs a lot of money, thousands of dollars, I think. So that's cool. Samsung did not specify which method it will use for connecting multiple Bluetooth headphones. So still some details that are unknown, a little confusing possibly. And the last thing that's not futurology that I'll mention is Snapchat. Oh, I guess it's a little futurology. Snapchat jumping on the AI selfie train with Dreams, part of the messaging app's push to use generative AI in more places. So now you can create AI portraits officially through Snapchat. This takes place after they released the My AI chatbot earlier this year. It's the company's own take on generative AI selfies. After uploading a series of real-life selfies in the app, specifically for Dreams, Snapchat displays a series of 8 photo packs to choose from with themes like doppelgangers or back to school. The first pack is free to make, and each one that's additional costs $1 as an in-app purchase. Snapchat users in Australia and New Zealand received support today. They now have access to it as of the 29th, followed by access opening up to the rest of the world over the coming weeks. From what I'm seeing, it looks a bit strange and obviously different in multiple aspects. To have the first pack be free, you get a taste of all the possibilities. And to be each one $1 extra sounds a bit concerning. You could get, I don't think you could get addicted to it, but they're saying Dreams is based on open source technology and each art style is made by Snap employees, according to Jack Brody, Snap's VP of product. Interesting. It's also against the terms of service to use someone else's selfie to create individual dreams. You got to use your own face. Don't use a celebrity, even though I'm certain some would love to, especially for their free pack, because it would be funny and an epic meme. Cool. Alrighty, so now to the futurology. I'm going to be a little brief on this, but it is pretty impressive. India launching a lunar rover that successfully landed on the moon. Pretty impressive stuff. It's continuing to do its walk. As of Friday, I think it landed on the South Pole, which I think it says it's historic, this article I'm seeing. So I think it is. I think it's the first time. Mission began over a month ago, an estimated cost of $75 million, and it's continuing to work. Data collection experiments that could help determine if there really is oxygen and hydrogen on the moon. I might be saying it wrong, the Chandrayaan 3 rover, so it's CHANDRAYAN-3 rover, is expected to conduct experiments over the 14 days. So it's a few days in, and looks like so far so good. That's great. After a failed attempt to land in 2019, India on Wednesday joined the U.S., Soviet Union, and China as the 4th country to achieve the milestone, I guess, of landing something on the moon. This comes just days after Russia attempted to launch Luna 25, aiming for the same region, but spun into an uncontrolled orbit, and it would have been the first successful Russian lunar landing after a gap of 47 years, 1976. Japan was about to have their own sort of anticipated launch as well, but they suspended a planned launch of a rocket carrying what would have been the country's first spacecraft to land on the moon, citing high winds as a concern. Although the rocket, the H-IIA rocket, Japanese flagship launch vehicle, has a 98% launch success rate, the wind conditions were unsuitable and forced suspension 27 minutes before the planned liftoff. This was yesterday. A new launch date has yet to be decided. It will be no sooner than Thursday because of necessary processes such as refuel. A launch could take place as late as September 15th. Oh, my birthday. Cool. let's see if that matters. So there's that. So I'll just put all of that out there. And yeah, so a lot of news today. Over the past week, a lot has happened across the board: entertainment, video games, technology, a little bit of futurology. In the lunar landings, both successful, failed, and paused. And that'll be it for me. Thank you all for tuning in to episode 4 of The Fresh Wire. A lot has happened, and I appreciate all of you who tune into the entire thing, or maybe just enough to get a little bit of the rundown from the past few days. I appreciate it. I always will. Thank you. And let me know what you want me to cover in voice messages or wherever you can find me across the board on social media. And I will see you all. I hope you can all hear me in the next episode. Until then, take care of yourselves and have a good one. Peace. Have a good night, evening, afternoon, morning, or wherever you are. See you around.